Hey Tony. Right now I'm just got all these different deadlines with the documentary and with what we got going with antiheroes, start my nonprofit, my Patreon on YouTube. I just have a million things going on, so it's easier for me to do these videos. I wanted to bring you up to date on my writing process. First and foremost, I read what you had written, at least the kind of rudimentary draft of Preston and Sasha. I thought it was fantastic. And our stylistically, we're so similar. I think it's going to be very easy to blend these things. You write more ornate, and I think one of your assets, one of your many assets as a writer, is that you really do understand character development, and I think you do it in a way that I'm just learning. You've been in the game a little longer, so I'm learning quite a bit from you, and I'm trying to write that way, to reflect what your style is. Sorry about these fucking birds, man. So anyway, there's some, I wrote that initial gunner scene, and definitely I think we should come up with some system where we're color coding areas that we feel are deficits that each other might be able to contribute, so that I'm contributing to some of your existing stuff, you're contributing to some of my stuff, and we can color code it on Microsoft Word. We can come up with a system, maybe add 500-600 words to each chapter in various places so that it blends our styles. I think that's how I foresee the blending happening. But I mean, I think we can be done with this by the end of this week coming up. I mean, it's a piece of cake for both of us, it seems like. So I did make some new adjustments to what I'm writing, or at least how I'm outlining these scenes. So the sponsor, I want to make a black guy. There's a lot of different reasons. I think that it just kind of goes with the overall themes of what we're doing. I want to make him a black guy. He's got a charming gap in his teeth. He's illustrious, polished black guy like Morgan Freeman. And there's this banker, very wealthy banker, Texan banker, that is court ordered to AA for a DUI that nobody knows about. And he's really in the anonymity thing. He had met the chip lady, and the chip lady had suggested that he get a sponsor. Now, he's a racist, the kind of guy that had grown up going to Texas, what is it, Texas A&W, thinking that he's more high class than he is, almost like a Bush W archetype, right? And he doesn't like black people, so she's suggesting that she knows this guy named Baker, phenomenal sponsor, and he needs to get outside of his comfort level. Well, the reason that he listens to the chip lady is because he's fucking her. He's having an affair with her while his wife has cancer. His wife of 15 years has cancer. He's got two children, one that's 12, one that's 8, young children with her. She's on her deathbed. Starts going to these AA meetings because he's court ordered. Nobody knows about it. His wife doesn't even know that he's going to these meetings. He meets this woman. He starts having an affair. She had suggested that he link up with a guy named Baker. Now, I based Baker off a correctional officer that I had done, when I was in state prison in California in this last term. There was actually a correctional officer named Baker, and he was this older black guy, Vietnam vet, and he thought that he was still in the war, and he talked that way, and he would say stuff. He'd get on the PA and be like, "It is not the 70s anymore, boys. You are not winning. All I gotta do is call squad. Tell them you hit my partner. They will come and they will tear your shit up, boys." And it's just very classic, the way that he would speak. So I'm modeling it after him, but a more polished approach. And the scene that I haven't written it yet, but the scene that I'm gonna, when we introduce Baker, goes a little bit into this banker, Colin McFadden, but for brevity and anonymity purposes, they call him Mac in the rooms. And he's just this, pretentious, wealthy, smug fuck. And he's doing his fourth step with Baker, and Baker's like, you can't rationalize or rashtify. That's not even a word, but you cannot make excuses, or you're going to walk around with shame, guilt, and resentments. And he's trying to get him to be honest with him. They're doing their 4-step inventory, and Banker has this secret. We don't know about it yet. It's going to come out in the exposition and the dialogue. So Baker, the sponsor, starts telling him a story about when he was in throes of alcoholism. He was driving drunk, swaying down the road, and he went into a driveway and he hit somebody, and he just sped off, killed somebody, just left him lying there dead in the road. And for years, it weighed on him, and finally he got sober. And when he started getting honest with himself and other people, he went to the house, consequences be damned. He was going to tell them what he had done because he couldn't walk around with this fucking weight on his shoulders anymore. He goes and he tells this family. Turns out that he had killed their dog. He always assumed that he'd killed a person. He was so fucking wasted, he couldn't tell the difference. So by telling him that, it encourages Mac, the wealthy banker, to admit that he's been having an affair with the chip lady for 6 months, and that his wife is sick with cancer, and that she's on her deathbed, and he's worried about how his kids are going to feel about it because they're going to be very upset with him. And that's how we set up those characters. Now, the arc with this, at least for this episode, I see it there, because it's kaleidoscopic, the way that you wrote Sick City or Black Neon. And I see this particular story, and I see Sasha and Preston's having 3 sections within this episode. So the first section of the Baker character, when we introduce him and Mac, are in that scene, which can be really great because with that backstory, you can do some great stuff with exposition. Now, this is where a new development has come in. I decided to actually write Baker based on like a Donald Goines or like Iceberg Slim, like old black, Superfly Curtis Mayfield type black guy, almost Tarantino-esque, so, we think he's this polished, very, affable black guy, but he's a brother, and this is the scene that I'm going to write. This would be the second part. All right, hold on. So I'm going to read it to you. I just want you to hear how it sounds out loud, and I'm going to do it in Baker's voice. So we're going to reveal that he's actually not who he says, and also we're going to see that Cindy, the woman that was trying to fuck Gunner, is the one that Mac had been fucking. Cindy and Baker are in a relationship. They go across the country doing this AA scam where he sponsors people, she fucks people, and they basically use this stuff to blackmail folks for money. That's a scam they're running. And, they eventually try to do it to Gunner, and Gunner ends up killing this black guy, Baker. Well, we had to make Baker unlikable. So, he's, the classic black pimp, misogynistic woman beating type. And this is how we reveal it. There was a succession of knocks on Cindy's door. It wasn't the board-based knocking of a solicitor, and it certainly wasn't law enforcement. Cindy knew both all too well. She thought it may have been Gunner. She felt like she had won the lottery in that situation. Finally, a man she wouldn't have to actually screw. He reminded Cindy of certain Johns she'd met throughout the years that would pay just to have her listen to them about their sorry-ass lives. She opened the door and was surprised when Baker came galloping in. He didn't even acknowledge her. She could tell that he was angry about something. Baker went to the leather sofa and sat down. He took out a Philly cigar and ripped it apart, removing the stringy guts of the tobacco on the coffee table. Cindy hated when he rolled blunts because he always made a mess, but she knew better than to lament about it when he was angry. She didn't want him to lose his cool, as he called it. Baker losing his cool had meant conspicuous welts on her face or spitting bloody chitlets gum-looking teeth into the toilet bowl. She didn't want to go there. Baker poured nugs from a translucent baggie onto the coffee table. He expertly placed the broken up weed in the shell wrapping of the Phillies, sucked on it. Cindy thought it looked like Baker sucking a thin dick, but knew better than to say something so silly. He lit the blunt and exhaled a thick, white, coughing cloud. "This fucking daddy's boy," Baker said. "I swear to God." "The banker?" Cindy said. "Yeah, Now get this. This boy want to tell his bitch, the one sick with cancer, that he been fucking with you." Baker chuckled with another painful cough, weed smoke puttering out. His gap tooth lost its charm and had a snake-like menace when he was out of character. Why the hell would he do that? Cindy asked. White people shit. Something about he don't want his kids feeling a certain type of way about the situation. I had to listen to some fucking Academy Award type shit, talking about how he was blinded by lusts, but confessing to his wife is the right thing to do for his kid's sake. Crying, all that dumb shit. Well, I am pretty fucking lustable. Bitch, you fat as all fuck. Just because some simp-ass dude into you don't mean you the queen of the goddamn stable. She had always been talked to this way. Every man that had ever been in Cindy's life, both literally and figuratively, had abused her emotionally to some degree. I love you, Daddy, she said as she rubbed his shoulder. Baker swatted her hand away, grimaced. I'm already knowing, bitch. Let's focus on the issue at hand. What are we going to do? We move on him. How, if he's already going to fess up to her? I'm on top of that. I went and I seen his 6-year-old today, paid a little visit to the crib. She was playing out front, and I walked up and I asked her if her parents was there. She said they was, and I told her I was some biblical-ass nigga from the heavens and that an angel named Cindy was fixing to come down and be her new mama bear. But that she had to tell her father about Cindy or shit wasn't never going to happen. It'll fuck with dude's head real good. See what I mean? Oh, that's cold, Daddy. That's real, real cold. But I ain't spent 10 years in the joint reading for nothing. I know how these rich folk think. Speaking of which, what's Freak Dude talking about? He can't get his dick hard. And he can't get it up and has a bunch of other mental problems. He's a vet. Iraq. Sounds a lot like that cat from Omaha. The fuck was his name? Marcus. Yeah, Marcus. He turned out to be a weirdo. He liked little boys and shit. We broke his ass off proper. Dude's money right? Some bad fucking Rolex, brand new Jeep Cherokee. That's what I like to hear, Baker said. Bonnaroo work, baby. You can suck my dick now. You've earned that. Cindy loved when he called her baby. She just fucking loved it. She bent down and unzipped his pants as he gently tugged on her hair. It was true love. Okay, so, obviously, I think that well, not obviously, but in my opinion, that scene was set up correctly because we reveal that he's not who he says he is right from the get-go. First of all, he goes in there. At first we assume there's just an AA connection because we know Cindy met Gunner at the AA meeting because this is later in the story. Sits down and the first thing he does is roll a blunt. And he starts talking like a Donald Goines character. Bitch, you fat as fuck. Stuff like that. And you're the queen of the goddamn stable. I'm borrowing that from like a Goines or Iceberg Slim lexicon. That's what the pimps had called their batch of hoes or whatever. And now we're also setting up that they have their sights on Gunner because of an expensive watch. Okay, there's an expensive watch that makes her target Gunner. And we don't know much about Gunner. We've only heard that section where he's in the meth psychosis. So I started coming up with, the last scene where he jerks off after he beats up the homeless guy and runs into the night. I think that that's going to be very effective. And, I don't know how you feel about that, but I wouldn't dismiss it. I think that that's how we should end the first episode because it's so outlandish. It's so, inherently out of place compared to the rest of the story. I think that's what's going to make this thing really work. It's going to blend our imaginations, famously. So this is the last section that I started writing. And it's about, it's about Gunner for the most part. And I think that you're going to have to come in and develop some of this backstory a little bit, but I think this is how it should be structured. Richie Francesco was a deadbeat, a fat drunk who hardly ever showered and spent most of his free time playing Dungeons and Dragons. At 42, he lived with his parents and only had one friend, a younger boy named Chun, who was a Chinese foreign exchange student. Chun smiled a lot, probably had no idea what was actually going on. But he continued to beat Richie every week at the picnic table at the community park. This was most likely because Richie paid Chun at the end of each Dungeons and Dragons session. And then one day, Chun was just gone. Richie's only friend never showed up at the park again. Booze had always given Richie some comfort, but losing Chun was the first real tragedy of his life. He used the beer to make him sick and dizzy to the point he'd pass out into the abysmal depths of the wasteland. In a lot of ways, he thought he may have been in love with Chun. In his mind, Chun had loved Richie's flat top, and he didn't seem to mind that he smelled like complete shit. Richie's father had made him work as a bus driver. The country had been going through a major recession, and a lot of these types of companies were paying employees under the table. This saved them a lot of money, but it also circumvented some of the more important regulatory rules that were set in place. This is what allowed Richie Francesca to work as a bus driver. They didn't run his criminal background check. If they had, they would have realized he was a piece of shit child molester, and he'd also been convicted of driving while intoxicated on 3 separate occasions. Richie was blacked out when he collided with a pedestrian. He had slammed on the brakes. The sudden halt made the bus slide wildly, fishtailing and leaving the battered pedestrian sprawled out on the street. He was gurgling blood. The thin red spittle made the occasional dissolving bubble. A swarm of onlookers formed to crowd around the body. It was actually the best thing that could have ever happened to Gunner. It became a widely televised and sensationalized case. Convicted child molester nearly slays war hero. Gunner was okay considering he was hit by a fucking bus. He would always have a sharp numbness in his lower back, and the gash under his left eye would heal hideously. There were ambulance chasers lining up to defend Gunner, and he ultimately received a 7-figure structured settlement. He had his rent covered for the rest of his life. Richie Francesca received nearly 15 years, and the transportation company filed for bankruptcy. It was a big local story, but it never did make national headlines. The problem was that Gunner didn't know what to do with the money like that. He was a simple man and didn't require fancy things. His mother had taught him very little about what to do if he ever came into money. His mom didn't teach him much. He remembered what her pleading eyes would look like when the Armenian landlord was having violent, demeaning sex with her. The one distinct memory that Gunner had correlated with money was that she had once told him about the watch. Greg, listen to me. My ma, your worthless elderly fucking grandmother, taught me a few things. There are only 3 expensive things you'll ever need. You need a nice car, a nice watch, and a nice pair of sunglasses. People treat you differently when you got money. That's how it goes. So if you can make it seem like you got it, then you have the benefit of being rich without being rich. You understand? Gunner's mom said. Gunner nodded. Do you really understand me? Or you just got that stupid look? No wonder my boyfriends would rather fuck you than me. Look at you. You're such a little fucking twerp. Gunner nodded again. What his mother failed to understand is that he was already dead inside at 9 years old. She would berate and humiliate him because that's what was done to her, but Gunner had reached his pain threshold much sooner than she would have ever expected. She grabbed him by the chin. Listen, you remember when I was filming that Angela Anal film? When we lived in Northridge? Gunner said innocently. Gunner's mother, pleased that he was speaking, let go of his face. Yes, Greg, when we lived in Northridge. I had just had my first major part. And you know what? You know what I bought? I bought a watch at first. I had wanted this bitch in Bolivia watch. Greg, if you'd seen this thing. So that's all I had written for that part. But what it's essentially going to do is it's going to go into this story about how her mom had taught her that you need a nice pair of sunglasses, nice watch, and nice pair of shoes to have the appearance of being rich. I mean, it's a statement about class in a lot of ways. And then she goes into a story. So it's almost exposition within exposition. So she's telling the story within the story about how when she first got her money, she went to go buy a car. And she was still in raggedy clothes because the first thing she had done is bought the sunglasses, watch, and shoes. And she went to a car dealership to buy a BMW, and everybody just ignored her. Nobody would even pay attention to her because they assumed she didn't have money. Then she had gone to a Cadillac dealership, to get a new Cadillac, and somebody came up and was very attentive to her, and she ended up buying the car. And she had asked the guy, well, why did you give me attention? I went to this other place, and they ignored me. They assumed that I was poor. Your watch. She's like, I knew it. I knew the fucking watch, right? So she talks about this watch. Now remember, she was like an unsuccessful bimbo porn star, right? So now we've been emphatic. We've set up the importance of this watch, right? I guess slightly a tip of the hat to Quentin, with Pulp Fiction, but not derivative in any sense. And if we can always change that. But I think that this exposition kind of parenthetically, exposition within exposition works, to a certain degree. Or I mean, to a good, yeah, I really like the way it works. So then that story that I was just telling, she's telling the story. I haven't finished writing it yet, but then it goes into Gunnar walking down a street, walking down an alley at night. He's got his expensive watch. This watch is what made Cindy and Baker put their sights on Gunnar in the first place. So this watch is a fucking curse, you know? And the fact that he was hit by, you know, a child molester, just, it's his addiction is a manifestation of the abuse that he endured. And that's why he has these sexual compulsion issues where, you know, he can only get aroused when he's violent. And that's why he's in AA, because he's trying to, you know, to quell those compulsions and not give into it, because he doesn't like hurting people. He's a good guy. It's a metaphor for addiction. Later, when he meets Preston and Sasha, he meets them and they give him Viagra. He does not know that this exists, and they kind of trick him to make him the muscle, which could be very funny because we can, you know, have him dress up like some, you know, wigger or whatever, you know, some like warm up suit that's totally out of character. Basically, he's just some muscle for Preston and Sasha because they know that they can use him to fight the cartel, you know, stuff like that. So he's walking through this alley and this homeless guy comes up to him. He's like, "Hey man, can you spare a couple bucks?" Gunnar says, "No, I don't have anything." He keeps walking. Homeless guy gets in and says, "Hey, look at that fucking watch you got. You know, that's a fucking, you know how expensive that fucking watch is? You can't spare a couple bucks? What the fuck is wrong with you? You know what kind of life I'm living?" And Gunnar's like, "What kind of life you're living? Man, get out of my face, man." He's like, and he keeps haggling him. Gunnar just takes off on him, beats the shit, beats him to a bloody pulp. Homeless guy's knocked out. They're in this alley, you know, by these bags of, you know, heaping trash, whatever. Gunnar is aroused, you know, and, you know, we can tell that in the third person that this outburst of violence has aroused him. He tugs his pants down. He starts jerking off fear. He masturbates furiously, you know, biting his lip, masturbating, you know, as if he's in some sort of werewolf trance. The homeless guy regains consciousness and sees him and goes, "Hey man, what the fuck? What are you, some sort of fucking weirdo?" Gunnar looks at him with this, you know, this demonic possessed look and puts his pants back on, runs furiously into the night, or runs into, you know, into the night. And I think that's how we should close episode 1. You know, for a number of reasons, as aforementioned. I mean, I just think that the way that it's composed right now, it's more of a traditional, you know, neo-noir or crime novel. And we're telling it episodically, but I think these outlandish plot points, the way that we've constructed them, I think that they're going to work more effectively than I think we even realize. Our styles are so similar. So that's that. And I'm really happy with that material. I mean, I haven't written some of that. I've read everything that I've written so far, but I mean, a lot of writing for me. Irvine Welsh had said it once when I went and saw him talk. He said that a lot of his writing is day writing, you know, thinking about what he's going to write before he actually does it, and that's very true with my process. Now, there's two things. I think that we should have Jim Olds adapt this into a teleplay or audio presentation, and there's a company called Payloads where it's essentially a file brokering company. You can upload a PDF, you can upload an audio. You keep like 98% of your royalties, much higher than Amazon. I already have an existing base, so I think we should release both the, you know, Kindle version as a PDF and the audio MP3 bootleg couple weeks before the actual Amazon release, so that we get that low hanging fruit, and we'll get more money, and we'll get a joint bank account, and this stuff will get, or like a joint PayPal will get automatically put into our PayPal, and we'll just divide it, you know, we'll say, okay, we'll divide it, you know, every Monday, whatever. So that way we get immediate money. We don't have to wait fucking 60 days for Amazon to pay us. I did that with Drugstores for Truckers. I made like 10 grand. That album cost me $200 as my overhead to get it mixed professionally, and that guy will work on antiheroes. But I think Jim, he's such a genius. I think we really should bring him on for that. I think he's open to it. I'm going to send him, you know, this video if you're okay with that. But Jim, he's a great guy. I mean, he's a mentor figure. He's a brilliant fucking writer, and he seems like he's into it. And I think he understands what we're trying to do. I mean, I really think this is going to translate into a premium series. It's just, I mean, it's phenomenal material, Tony, and what you've written is transcendent. You know, it's teaching me how to richly develop characters more. I mean, I'm essentially evolving as a writer by working with you and Jim, and I appreciate both of you guys very much. Um, and I think that once we're done with this initial draft, I don't think that we should be concerned at all about the length. Who gives a fuck what the length is? It can be, can be 200 pages. It doesn't really matter, but I think we can be done at the end of this week. And I think what we should do is get the draft, put it into one document. Like I said, go through it. I'll color code everything in red that I think, okay, Tony can sharpen this up, like Richie Francesca, the child molesting bus driver. That's a part I think that you would be able to do that. Like the backstories, you're just phenomenal at that, the little details. And also, it's kaleidoscopic. So every time there's a different narrator, every time we're narrating a different story, because there's these parallel stories existing, the narrator can have a change in value, a change of values. It can impart an opinion, so to speak. He was a piece of shit child molester, but that set of values changes for every set of character. Sasha and Preston might be a little different, just in a nuanced, very, light-handed way. Also, the last thing is I have a guy named Avery Smith, amazing book design cover guy, graphic artist. He's actually editing Idiot Savants. He's classically trained editor. He's a musician. He's a published writer. He's an animal, right? He can do anything. He can make very premium covers. This is the idea that I have for Juarez. For Antihero, it would be Antiheroes Juarez episode episode 1, A Ballad of Mickey Fang. And what I think we should do is get a porcelain-looking mask. He can do this in Photoshop. Get a porcelain-looking mask. Put a Day of the Dead girl, with the coil thread lips and the makeup, or maybe like a Mexican, something like that. Day of the Dead girl. I have Sharon Tate right here, like that. That's actually, you had a lot to do with that. I love Sick City. I got the Sharon Tate tattoo. It really, is emblematic of like, the curse of fame. And it was like, I was going through that delusion about how I was becoming famous when I actually wasn't. I was like, I'm in Penthouse, I've made it, shit like that. And that's what it symbolizes, the death of fame. I think that we should have him make a porcelain mask, put the Day of the Dead girl art on that porcelain mask, and then he can manipulate it and he can place it in a puddle of blood. So it's like a porcelain mask with this Day of the Dead girl floating in this puddle of blood. And then, a thin, translucent almost map of Juarez, to blend it. And that way we can make each cover different, but it can be uniform, and I think that mask just says a lot of different things all at once. Tell me what you think. I can have him do it in 2 days. I'm going to pay for a press release. I already have different magazines that want to interview us for this when we drop it. I'm getting all the ducks in the row with that. We need to talk about the joint bank account. We need to talk about Jim, because I think we should, definitely include him in the process with this, depending on what he wants to do, how compensation would be, if he's in it like we are, where, it's not too much work. He's adopting essentially these episodic books, and I don't know, we can split it 3 ways, or I don't know if he's going to require a fee, but I know that there's not WGA red tape involved with this because it's a different medium. So that's it, Tony. You're doing a great job. Let's stick to our outline. I hope you like the new material that I've presented. I love it. I think it's going to work insanely well with this, and I just know that this shit's going to blow up. It's with me, you got to remember, it's not, I'm going to roll the dice and hope that this shit blows up. I make anything I fucking do blow up. That's just what I do. It's the selling a fucking record out of the trunk of a car mentality, and I got that hustle from being a convict and from being a drug dealer. And I've applied that same thing to the arts, which is it's the same concept, and you're the kind of guy, I'm going to push your stuff, push Jim's stuff, and it's gonna fucking hit. I'm confident. And then we can smoke crack in Fiji and tan with cucumber slices on our eyes, and wear short shorts, and drink GHB doused pina coladas, shit like that. So yeah, I'm looking fucking forward to this, man. And I think we're going to hit it out of the park, straight up. Super confident about this, super confident about the documentary, confident about everything. Losing my friend Paul woke me the fuck up. I got the mind, body, spirit thing. I'm balanced right now, and I'm just I'm just making it happen, man. And I have the utmost faith in you and Jim. I look up to both of you guys. You guys definitely set the bar for where writing should be. I think my writing's more minimalistic. Yours is ornate. If we can find a middle compromise of that, I think we're going to have some fantastic material. Let's try to have a conversation tomorrow, Tony, and perhaps we can have one with Jim. Conference call about it. See what his willingness to be involved with the project is for the adaptation aspect. But you know, we can. What I'm thinking is that we make the adaptation different. You know, just as he had adapted Fight Club and made it his own thing and put these amazing, you know, single serving friend scenes in there that were the most memorable in my opinion, and ultimately that film surpassed the book hands down. I mean, and how rarely can you say that? I think Jaws is another one I can think of where the film was better than the book. Uh, I don't know about Clockwork Orange or Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I think that they were very good adaptations, but I don't know. You know, Requiem for a Dream. I don't know. I mean, they're very, you know, Train Spotting. You know, I think maybe I like the movie Train Spotting better than the book. I'm not sure though. I don't know. But anyway, um, each adaptation can be a little different. And when we put all these episodes, maybe we can do 10 or 12 episodes. It might be 1,000, 1,200 page novel. We can do extended scenes in it so that we're really like doubling down, tripling down on this material. We sell it as a Kindle episodically. We sell it as an audio episodically. We adapt it into like a longer book with more material, extended stuff. You know, I try to think whenever I make memorabilia or whenever I do things writing, I try to think of what I would like if I was a fan. So like, you know, I'm a fan, like if Hunter S. Thompson was coming up with these badass episodic series, like, and then after all of it was out, it was one big book with extended material. I'd love that. So I try to do things that I know that I would like. Sign blotter acid, all that shit. Anyway, I'm rambling on and on. No, I'm not on cocaine. I'm sober as a judge. I just got my new sunglasses, and in the spirit of it makes me look richer, I'm gonna keep them on. All right, guys. I will talk to you. Palabra.